CSIS 2470 is filmed before a live studio audience.
Hey everybody, welcome to class today. We're going to be taking a look at AJAX, not the cleaning product. So let's just dispel a couple of myths, if you will, at first. And myth number one, AJAX is not a technology. It's not a library. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of writing code. You could maybe call it a paradigm if you want. And it's an acronym. It stands for Asynchronous, JavaScript, and XML. XML is another acronym which stands for Extensible Markup Language. Now, XML is no longer a thing, really. I mean, it does exist still, but it's not really in use anymore. But basically, it was a way to make custom tags. So you could do something like the following here. You could have something like, a person tag. And inside the person tag, you'd have like a name, Beavis, and an address, and so on down the line. And you would use this format of these fake tags, if you will, as just text strings that you could transfer between websites. And then your code would look at that and it would interpret it and it would know what to do with it and all that fun stuff that doesn't really work that way anymore. I mean, you could still do it that way, but the new way to do that is with JavaScript object notation. And so rather than an X for AJAX, you would have a J there for JSON, JSON, which again stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So all these acronyms, sorry about all that. But to sum it all up, all we're really talking about here is the ability to refresh the page refresh the content of the page without reloading the page. Generally speaking, if you process a web form or something, you're sending it off to a PHP site, or a .NET site or an ASP site or something like that. And it's going to process it. It's going to refresh the page, maybe even redirect to a different page. But you're refreshing the page. Well, with JavaScript, you're going to change the content of the page without reloading it. So take, for example, this page right here. This is one of my favorite sites here, YouTube sites, Cracking the Cryptic. This is him solving Wordle for December 2nd. So if you haven't done that one, it's too late because today's the 3rd now at this point. But if you watch, in fact, it just happened on the screen. Rewind, you'll see it. The thumbs up right there a minute ago was a 25. Now it's a 26. And I bet if we wait here for a second, we'll see it jump up to 27, right? That's happening asynchronously. The page didn't reload and you just saw it jump to 27 there. Only that little piece of the content changed, right? So that's what's happening when we're dealing with asynchronous code. We're going to learn how to do that in our own websites. And one last thing I should mention before we get there, we're going to be interacting with what are known as endpoint APIs or REST APIs, where we're just going to have a URL to some other site that has data or information. There it goes, it went to 28. But we're going to have access to a URL that has information or something that we want to display on our website. So we're going to use the numbers API. So, as always, there ain't nothing to it but to do it. To the code. So to start off with here, I have an empty HTML file. It's just linked up to my JavaScript and a style sheet, which I've already written the style. We're not going to bother looking at that, but you'll see it come into play a little bit later. And then right now we have an empty script file here. Okay. So the basic idea here is we're going to create an object of the XML HTTP request variety, if you will, the class, right? But again, JavaScript doesn't really use classes for real like most languages do, but that's kind of how we view it in our paradigm of what an object is. So let's just start with let x equal, and it can be any variable name you want, but it's a new HTTP request, right? That's just an object. Now, if we go to the documentation here, we head over to MDN and check this out, and you can see there's the constructor right there, and these are some of the properties it has, and these are some of the methods it has. We're only going to use a couple of them, and that's all we really need to set things up. So the first thing we want to do is create a tunnel between our code and some other website, right? Maybe it's UPS and you have a big e-commerce site and you're going to display your customers' tracking information and you have to get it out of the UPS database. Or maybe it's just some silly little numbers website, which is what we're going to do. So let's get that URL for that site. And it is numbersapi.com. And the first thing you're going to learn about dealing with APIs, they all have their own documentation, right? There's some confusing stuff on this page, and then there's some simple stuff on this page. They have jQuery stuff here, which we don't need to worry about. and they have all these different things on how to use it. I'm not super worried about you understanding this specific API and its instructions. I'm just going to walk you through the couple pieces we're going to use. So you can see here there are 3 samples here, right? We have numbersapi.com/5/math. Then we have this one here /42. Then we have this one /12/3 date. And each of these are URLs we can go to, and it'll show you what's going to happen down here. Like right now, we're seeing this middle one, this trivia. 42 is the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. Hopefully you know what that's all about. But if I change this number right here from 42 to 41, notice that this changes here, but also it changed up in the URL right here. So if I were to go up here and randomly change this to, say, 30, this changes to 30, and it says 30 is the number of years that tarantulas can live up to. Jeez. So what we want to do is grab that information from here and display it on our web page. Or maybe we wanted to do this math one here. So let's try that. Let's try number 10/math. So I just picked the number 10 randomly, and you can see what it did right down here. 10 is the aliquot sum, I don't know what is that, of only one number, the discrete semi-prime 14. All right, I have no idea what we're talking about here, folks, but there you go. That's a fun one. Let's change this number up here from 10 to, say, 15. And notice here, when I leave off the octothorpe, I just get this plain text. But if I put the octothorpe in there, it displays it on the web page itself, right here, okay? So we're going to obviously want the one without the octothorpe because we just want that raw data. Same thing with the date here, so let's just randomly pick a date up here. We'll say, I don't know, 0725/date. Notice no octothorpes, and so it just gives this text right here, and it's some random fact about that date. All right, so those are the 3 main URLs here that we're going to look at: the math one, the just plain number one, and then the date one. So math, trivia, date. All right, let's start with, say, the math one. Let's go over here to our code here, and remember, we need to create a tunnel from our code to that website. So one of the functions, one of the methods, if you remember documentation here, is open right here. So we want to x.open, and we want to get some information. So this is one of the parameters it takes in. The other parameter is the actual URL we're going for. So https www.numberapi.com/ we'll do the number 63. Actually, we'll do 64, my favorite year of Mustang. So now we've opened a tunnel, but we're not done, not even close. We still got a lot of stuff to do here. The next thing we have to do is send the request through this tunnel, right? So we do send. Now, as this is happening, let's go over here and take a look at, we'll look at the MDN again, MDN ready state. And what we're looking at here, and we're going to see it in our code in just a second, but we have this ready state here, and there's these different values here for a ready state. So the question then becomes, what is the ready state of our object? Well, it's 0 when we haven't even called the open function, right? The value is 0. Once we've called the open function, it becomes 1. So maybe we could put a little note here, ready state equals 0, then 1 after open is called, right? And then the state becomes 2 once the send function has been called, or the send method, and the headers and statuses are available. The header and status are available. We'll talk about the status in a minute. But in other words, we got back some information from the server, from this numbers.api or whatever, .com or whatever, right? Numbersapi.com. So we got some information back from that. So the next little note here is state equals 2 after getting from server. And by server, I mean whatever URL that is, right? Okay, but we're still not ready yet. After that happens, we'll be in the loading state until it gets all the data. Now you remember, the one we're about to do here is just going to be the number 63. That's the data, right? I mean, if you look here in the code, that's all there is, okay? There's no other information there. So it can take time depending on the connection and other factors, but it can take some time to get that data and bring it to your code. So after the send happens, it's set to ready state 2, but it's now ready state equals 3 while getting the data. Once we've received the data, look over here, we are ready state 4, which is the done state. Once we're done, that means we have the data. Now we can display it, right? That's a lot of stuff to go through before we can actually display the data, but it happens pretty quickly. Okay, ready state equals 4, done, once we have the data. Okay, so notice there's only a few lines of code here. I've just got a bunch of comments right here. But now we have this, and so what we want to listen for, we want our object to listen for the ready state change. That's just like you can listen for a click or a button push or whatever. You can also listen for a ready state change. So let's do that right here. We'll do x.add event listener, and we're listening for the ready state change event. And remember, that could be click or key press or some of the other ones we've looked at in the past. And then the function we're going to do is, we'll call it display info. We're going to change all this to arrow functions and everything later, but I want to keep this pretty simple for now. Now also, I'm going to move all of these comments up and kind of out of the way. But if you want to see the way they were laid out there just a second ago, you could rewind the video here. But I'm going to move them all to the top here. And I'm going to modify them slightly. So put open there, and then ready state is 2 after getting a response from server using send, and then 3 while we're getting the data, and then 4 when we're done. Okay, so let's just move all this to the very top here. Maybe we'll even delete it later. All right, so we got a request. We made our tunnel. We sent our, we started with our object. We opened a tunnel. We sent a request through this tunnel to get some information. We've now added an event listener to our object, and it's going to be calling this callback function right here called display info. So function display info, and we're going to just display the information we get from this right here. Okay. Now you might notice that the information at the moment is just plain text. It's not even in JavaScript object notation or XML or anything. It's just raw text. Totally fine. We'll talk about the JSON portion of it a little bit later here. But starting off here, I'm going to just console.log, and what is it we're going to be consoling? Well, there's a property of our X object, which is our XML HTTP request object, called response text. That will be whatever we got when we became done as status 4. Okay, now we need to check for this ready state in a minute here. So we may get an error here, which is expected. So don't worry about that for the moment, but let's just run this and see what happens here. When I refresh the page, I don't even think I have it opened up yet. So it's just down here, project, open it up, look in the console, and we got fail to load resource. Let me make sure I got the URL right first of all, numbersapi.com/64. Oh, and notice here it says not secure, which means it has not got the S there. And let's also look and see the www may or may not be necessary. We'll see. Let's refresh. So we got the data here. Now we're going to eventually display it in the DOM and everything in just a few minutes, but we do have the data. So now let's make sure that we don't get it. Like notice here, it came in twice, right? What that probably means is we got it while it was kind of loading and after it was done loading, right? Because every time the state changed, this function was run, right? So we only want to do it if we're in state 4. So right in here, if ready state is equal to, we'll do triple equals 4, then we want to do console.log. Let's refresh that. Oh, we got an error because I forgot to put the good old X right there from our object. Refresh. And there we have the number or the text, and we got it just one time. Okay. Okay, so we've got the information here, but we're not quite done yet. The other thing I mentioned was the status, right? And so let's take a look in here at the MDN status code. Whoops, the status still got me there. These are ones you should be familiar with, right? There's these information responses that are 1 through 199. And let's look at the ones that you probably recognize. For example, the 400s down here. A 403 is a forbidden. A 404 is not found. I'm sure we've all seen that. The 500 errors are server errors. 503, for example, is server issues. Let's just find one down here. Service unavailable or bad gateways of 502. So you've probably come across some of these. Well, the one we care about is 200, which means everything's good. We have a good status, meaning the website is valid, it's there, and we have everything, right? So right here, 200 is okay. So to be extra careful here, we just add and x.status is equal to 200, right? So now when we refresh, it won't look any different, but now we've taken away all the risk of us having a bad connection and all this stuff and not trying to display something until we actually have the data. Okay, so that is us hard coding the number here, right? I mean, this really is all there is to the AJAX stuff. We're basically done with this idea, but I told you we would look at this JSON business here in a minute.